Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for the 25th of August, 2023. I'm Aaron McHale, moderating the meeting. Benji is away today. And joining us today, we have Ralph Kohler, Thomas Howell, Laurie Escola, and Emma Horrell. And Ralph is currently sharing his screen. And I'm going to pass over to Ralph and Laurie to talk about an issue that they would like to discuss. So on you go.
Okie doke. The issue, we're talking about today is issue number 3370946. Page title should contextualize the local navigation. It's a rather new issue created in June. The group here has already worked last year, I guess, on the regression issue, which is basically in a similar scope, a similar direction, but the scope of the page title is a bit broader. The regression issue was about pages managed as fields, managed form, managed display should include name of content type or entity. And I scroll down to give a bit of a context. And we came up with the following pattern back then as a suggestion to for page title, action, aka primary tab name for name entity type, which means manage fields for article content type till the my Drupal 9 site. And for the H1, for sighted users have article content type, and for H1 for screen readers, visually hidden manage fields, the title of the active tab, front-loaded manage fields for article content type. That was the proposal only for bundle types like content types and the like. The suggestion over here went in a similar direction, but a bit broader. I've applied the patch, I guess it was yesterday or the day before, and started to write up a Google Sheet. I can paste the link in the chat. There it is. It's just easier to see for consistency and have everything next to each other. First column is the path, second column is the title, then the H1, and so apologies. And then I've also added, in case there is a primary task label in place, the title, as well as the secondary task. And as you can see, let's take a look at the article. The H1 for the article is for screen reader users. The title is Manage Display Article Drupal. And the H1 is article Manage Display. Yeah, that's basically the current state. And I've read the comments by Christina and Laurie they've made, and was already writing up the points I consider suboptimal, and wanted to comment over the weekend, and yeah, well, wait for Benji to arrive, but I could quickly list the points I consider problematic at the moment from a readability standpoint. And yeah, also it has to be noted that in the issue we've talked and discussed about back then, it was entirely only the scope for the bundle type, and we mainly looked at the content type. But in that case, it also covers the top level menu, all top level menu items, like also content and permissions, and also people, and also configuration and the like. So it's a bit broader and has a few details we haven't discussed back then. But maybe if any one of you has any questions or something to add before I go on with the points I've noticed, we could use as a start for the discussion.
Yeah, I see. I was going to ask, and I see Thomas has his hand up.
Just very briefly, could you freeze the first line of the sheet?
Yep.
That's a good idea.
This is edit. Where is it in?
Is it under view, I think? I'm trying to remember.
Freeze, there it is, yeah.
Yeah.
First
I always find it in both Google Sheets and Excel, it's always in the least, like the place you'd least suspect it's gonna be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is such a great just to thank you for putting this together, Ralph, because that is a really useful sheet you put together there just to get a sense of kind of what we're looking at. And just to check, is everybody clear on what it is that we're looking at and what the context of what we're discussing is?
I could do with somebody explaining that if that's not going to take up too much time, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, okay, so obviously this sheet that we've got is, Ralph, does this sheet just cover like things under field types and things like that, or is it
No,
more
it's
broad?
basically as is top level menu item. 1 second, I
Okay.
quickly draw that out. If you go in there, welcome to Drupal. You have here content, and you have here content. Basically, that's the path. Admin
Okay.
content. Then you have the title. I basically went in the dev tools. Oops. Close that. Took a look there. At the moment, it's content content Drupal in that case. As you see, content Drupal. Then I went ahead and inspected the H1. And in that case, it's just content as the H1. And that way I went through, took a look. Oops. For example, blogs, comments, and so forth. And one detail in the regression issue back then, we haven't covered and basically forgot adding those secondary tasks to the H1 and the title. Those all got unnoticed.
So is it about, oh sorry, can I just check? So is it about like having consistency between the title and the H1? So you've mapped that out in the spreadsheet?
If you take a look at the moment, for example, let's take a look. Let's compare, for example, a content type article. You have here in the edit tab, you have edit article content type, but now manage fields, you have manage fields as
so
the
you lose
H1.
that context. I get you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And this was specifically what the issue that the first issue Ralph was looking at. I know yeah, I don't know, Ralph and Laurie, you were, or particularly Laurie, we were working on an issue that, as you said, with a broader scope. I'm wondering, either yourself or Ralph, do you want to explain a bit more about the other issue there?
Laurie, do
you mean talk about this broader issue or talk about the specific issue? Which one do you want?
I was thinking about this one because I think it'd be good to, that one, the other one is more focused on, fields and things. I think this one is it more broader, like to look at the admin UI as a whole? Is that right?
Yeah, it is basically the same issue. I would say that this issue most severely impacts the field UI, but there are other UIs, which it impacts. And we did discover this through the field UI as well, but realized that it's not something that we could fix within the field UI because it's just how the page shadow works in general. So I would say it's the same problem as the other one. It's just, I guess, that we made the realization that we should not fix it in field UI.
Okay, and Emma, is this does this help clarify as well, kind of what you know your understanding of this?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thanks for that.
Okay, Ralph, I think you had you were going to bring up some other points.
Yeah. There are several smaller details. In the regression issue, our main idea was to front load the information, because basically if you're a screen reader user and you get to, for example, the article content type, and as soon as you are on the article content type and navigate now in between the available tabs, each time in our suggestion, it would be front loaded, meaning manage fields for article content type, or now you're on manage display for article content type. That way, the most important information is front loaded. That way, it's currently in the other issue, in the newer one. The bundle type is front loaded now, meaning if you go on the first, you know, you're on the article content type, now you get article manage fields, article manage display, or in case the type is appended, meaning article content type, manage fields, article content type, manage display. So the important information is at the end, and you have to skim or scan with your ears through it. Same with, for example, your eyes. And if it's front loaded, you're able to jump off at any time, meaning, okay, manage fields, and I know I'm on the article content type, I can skip. But in case I'm not sure where I am, or if I have a short working memory, then I am able to continue. But that way, it's a bit more cumbersome from my perspective. And on the other hand, that's something we haven't discussed back then in the context, for example, of extend. There you have extend, which basically lists the available modules. Then you have extend update and extend uninstall. There we would have to come, if we would stick to the front loading pattern for cases like that, there would have to be some discussion. But as there's some detail, if you take a look at all the top level menu items, everything is a verb except extend, which is it's a noun, sorry, and extend is a verb. Always mix those two up. And that way, if you front load it, update, extend, you have basically two verbs instead of, for example, update. If the top level menu item would be called module, then you could easily write update module, for example. That way, it's a bit more tricky. And another detail I've noticed, there are several, for example, for media types, then for contact forms, and for content blocks. Edit is front-loaded, appended to each and every page for that type, in contrast to others where it's just on the edit page. That's also a redundant, not very helpful information, basically. And for translation, that is something that's in particular on further down. edit style translation for large, edit responsive. All the translation H1s are rather wordy and lengthy. And the last point, as I said, we forgot on the regression issue back then also is, or left out, is the secondary task. You have no way to distinguish between, where's a good example? RSS, for example, here on manage display article, manage display article, manage display article, manage display article. Because there the secondary tab is all about view modes, meaning full, RSS, teaser, and display. So it's difficult to distinguish that way, or impossible.
But that's not an issue with the pattern. That's an issue that the page is giving us incorrect titles right now. It's because of, it would have been even more confusing if the page title previously was full content and not managed display. So we can change the titles in a follow-up after this one to take that into account.
But not sure, because the pattern so far hasn't included yet the title of the secondary tab.
So the title of the page would then have to be like, because this is not including the information of the tabs per se. This is not taking any strings from the local task manager. What it's taking from there is just the route, and it takes the title of that route. And what we then have to do is we have to make sure that the second level local tasks include meaningful page titles that explain their relationship with wherever they are.
So I see Thomas has his hand up, and like to give him the opportunity to come in as well.
So I'm still struggling to understand what our recommendation is with this issue. I'm seeing the difference between path title and H1, that there's no consistency. And is our recommendation that these things should follow a consistent pattern? Because right now it seems to be very opinion based. Like someone thinks that the H1 should be X, someone thinks that the title should be X, but we're not actually following any hierarchical structure, even though path gives a very strictly hierarchical approach.
So all of these have different purposes. And just to be clear, the H1 that we have here is the one that we would be providing for the screen reader. So what we're talking about is the screen reader H1s. And it could, basically the hypothesis that we have is that screen readers need additional context on top of what the visual user needs in the H1, because of the current page title is not going to be visible for the visual view, and that's because of it's visible through the local tasks. But it might be, we want to make it convenient for the screen reader users as well to understand what is the page that they are currently in. So that's why we are changing the H1. So that is the reason why we're discussing the H1. Then obviously the document title has a different purpose, because it's what do you see on your browser tab. So there's like a different sort of priority to how we structure that.
Right.
Because
I do understand that. What I'm getting at is it doesn't feel as if there is a consistent pattern for the entire site, or even series of patterns that says, if this is the design of the page, then this is what we would expect the title to be. It just feels because it at different times it's going to different depths. I think of it like max depth when you're looking at the path and you're trying to figure out where you want to go in the path. It just seems inconsistent. There was an example, I think, further up, close to the top, that I was looking at. Let me see. Which one was it? Yeah, I think I was looking at the two manages, and it was the wording around I think it was like the default comments versus edit contact, and it just isn't clear how the H1 is being derived from title. And there were some things where it was all the same. I'm just what I'm trying to say is that it feels like I agree with the intent of this issue, but I feel like we should be able to be consistent with the pattern that we're laying out, so that the title in the H1 makes sense, and it doesn't feel like it's just someone's opinion of what the H1 should be, but that the H1 is being derived from good titles. Does this make sense at all?
Yes, I think so. For example, if you look at the row 25, the page title for that is edit default comments comment type. But then if you look at the sub pages of that, the title is manage fields default comments. So that's a different title, right? So is that kind of one symptom of that problem, Thomas?
Yeah, that is one symptom of that problem, correct?
Yes. And so I don't think that's intentional right now. The challenge is that, so for example, on the row 25, that comment edit form has a override for the title, which kind of overrides the generic logic of how the page title is generated. And I think we want to get rid of as many of those as possible to provide consistent page titles. So it's not necessarily a fault in the algorithm itself. It's just for some reason, for historical reasons, that page happens to have that override.
And I was trying to compare, so we're going to compare 4 lines. There are 2 sets of 2. If we look at line 17 and 18, we see that it says like manage fields and manage form display, and it's getting that from the farthest right of the path. So we go to the path, we go to the farthest right, we see that we're talking about editing a block, which is it's not manage, it's you've got 3 depths to the path that result in the H1 of what we're looking at. If we then go down to lines 22 and 23, and we look at book and book settings, we're not doing that at all. So both the title and the H1, despite the fact that it would be helpful in the title to differentiate, and the fact that book and book settings are at 2 different depths, neither one of those factors is really visible in either the title or the H1. So that's what I was trying to say in terms of when I look at the title, a lot of the titles seem to be just because someone felt that should be the title. It's not being derived from information that would make it helpful to someone looking at that URL.
So I think that, again, it's that settings page probably has an override, which overrides the page title for some reason to books. And for that reason, there's nothing for us to add to that page title, because it would be just books.
Right. So it's getting overwritten in settings. Can we even tell which of these paths, which of these H1s are being overwritten?
We can tell it based on, when we see these inconsistencies in here, and we can do a grep in the code for the overrides as well. I think a lot of the inconsistencies come from that. So maybe it would be, because I think I agree that all of these should be fixed. Like all of the inconsistencies that we are seeing are caused by that, because of the algorithm which we have, which is that we have current page title, which we combine with the current section that you are in. It's a very consistent pattern. and then the overrides mess up with that a little bit. So I'm wondering if it would be, if we agree on are we agreeing that the algorithm that we have is right, then we maybe should talk about the exceptions and how to clean that up. Or are we still disagreeing on the algorithm itself and how we want these page titles to be generated?
So I wonder if it would be helpful, because the spreadsheet we're looking at is like the current state, right? So it's how things are right now. And
yep,
from what I understand, the issue that we're talking about essentially is looking to try and establish a generic pattern that we can use that fits the broadest of use cases, I suppose, across the admin UI. So we have that consistency. Is that right?
Yep, that sounds right.
Okay, so maybe Ralph, it might be helpful if you could like just open up the admin UI and we can see a couple of examples, because I think
which version, the patch version or install without the patch?
Oh, is there there's a patch version. How much does the patch version change? Does it change everything?
Yeah, it does change all of the titles.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we should look at that then, because I think that would be a better use of time, would be to see, okay, what should we do with, going forward? If you've got that.
Can you in the meanwhile give me access to edit the spreadsheet? I could just maybe add some examples of what I think some of the titles should be, so that people get an idea on what I think is the ideal title.
Is it possible by adding email address here?
Yeah, I'm gonna write my email in the chat.
Okay. 1 second, I shouldn't be on a video.
And so it sounds like what we're saying just while Ralph is getting that the way I understand it, this pattern that we want to get to is essentially the title of the page is consistent across, let's say, the section that you're in. And by section, I mean all of the pages that are grouped by a set of tabs and sit under a single menu item in the admin interface. So for instance, under structure, content types, everything under there would use the same page title. Is that or well, maybe not. So everything under like each individual content type would be, so articles, so all of the tabs would have the same and as you say, H1, because the page title is different.
That's for sighted users, but if you take a look at the DevTools, then you have a visually hidden span
right
after the article. But that's something, if you take a look, if you compare the title and the H1, for example, in the context of the article, then on the title, it's front-loaded, meaning manage display article Drupal, and on the H1, it's the other way around, article manage display. That is also inconsistent and might be confusing, because if you visit a page, I could quickly demonstrate with my fingers up. Are you able to hear me right now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. One test.
VoiceOver on Safari. Manage form display vertical line Drupal window. Toolbar has keyboard focus. Manage form display vertical line Drupal web content. You are currently on web content. To enter the web area, press Control Option Shift down arrow. Manage display article Drupal. Page has 20 links, 34 buttons, 5 headings, 35 form controls, 1 table, 10 landmarks. Manage display vertical line Drupal web content. VoiceOver off.
As you can see, the thing that is announced is the title and not the H1, and the H1 is then just announced in case you go into the rotor, for example.
So I guess I was thinking that as well. So like it's helpful that you've demonstrated that. So I'm wondering, is putting the context that we've done into the page title enough for screen reader users? Do we also then need to, like, I'm thinking, would it be okay to have article as just article and then not have any, we don't, not have the visually hidden information, because it seems like that is already in the actual page title.
That's what you mean. Yeah, 1 second. I quick unplug my
VoiceOver on Safari. Manage 16-point Apple System UI font. Headings menu. You are currently in the heading level 2. Toolbar items. You are currently on the heading level 2. Headings menu. Heading level 2. Toolbar item. Headings menu. Heading level 2. Toolbar headings menu. Heading level 2. Toolbar items. Headings menu.
Oh no, it worked.
Buttons menu. Headings menu. Heading level 2. Toolbar item. Heading level 2. Breadcrumb. Heading level 1. 2 items. Black on white. Article. Black on white. Manage display. You are currently in the VoiceOver menu. This is a list of VoiceOver menu options. To navigate up and down the list, use the arrow keys. To choose a menu item, heading level 2. Primary tabs. Heading level 2. Secondary tabs.
So, and basically...
Form controls menu. Tables menu. Landmarks menu. No items in Windows spots menu. Links menu.
Links.
Link. Link. Visit link. Visited. Link. Visited. Link. Manage display. Active tab.
And you have the active tab illustrated on the links page of the rotor. So you basically are able to chop it together, but
no items in links menu. Heading level 2. VoiceOver off.
1 second, I have to replug in. But based on WCAG success criterion 252 and 242 and 246. 242 refers to the title and 246 refers to the H1. The H1 based on 246 should be basically descriptive enough to know what the page is basically about. And due to the fact that each tab is a page on its own, it doesn't entail as well manage form display, manage fields, edit, manage permissions, and translate content type. So an general article H1 for screen reader users might be problematic, but I'm not entirely sure.
That's fine. Do we and so do we not put for the secondary row of tabs, it looks like we're not putting that in the H1 or in the page title?
So far not. It's something we've missed back then. And it's something different if in case manage display default is active, or as you can see, the path changes for full content or for RSS or for teaser. So it's basically a different page.
Right. So I'm wondering if that is something we, maybe we should also include information about the secondary level of local tasks in addition to the first level.
That is something I was thinking about, but yeah.
So we are about 2/3 of the way through the meeting, and it would be good to maybe have some kind of, sense of what best use of time would be for today. Is there specific things that we need a consensus on at this meeting, or do we really just want to get affirm that we're on the right direction with this?
So
I
this
guess
is one of the usability improvements that we are targeting for 10.2. So from that perspective, getting guidance, if the team wants to weigh in on it, would be earlier the better, of course. We do have feedback from the accessibility topic maintainers and usability topic maintainers already. So from that perspective, it's not strictly required.
Okay. So,
but I think any feedback would be appreciated in the approach.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess for you know, for people here, do we have a consensus that that this approach is a good way forward? Thomas, how are you feeling about this at the moment? Because obviously you were raising some potential concerns earlier.
Should we take a look at some of the cleaned up titles maybe first?
Sure.
Yeah,
Does that help?
Yeah.
Where should I go?
They are in the spreadsheet. I created a new column in there.
Spreadsheet.
It's not all cleaned up yet. There's a lot of rows, but I sort of tried to do a quick cleanup on some of them.
Ralph, we're not seeing the spreadsheet.
Oh, so, I thought you were on a, okay, one sec. Sorry.
The multiple monitors strike again.
Sec. The window gets unresponsive. Now it works. One second, I make the first view freeze. First column also that way. Okay.
Okay, so where would you suggest we focus on?
We can take a look at the field UI ones, for example, because if that was one of the ones where there were concerns about specific display modes or view modes. So if you look at the H1 after follow-up, so that's kind of just now my opinions on what I think the H1s should look like after we've removed all of the overrides and made them consistent.
And obviously the after the colon would be visually hidden. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Or the colon itself is also hidden.
Yes. So we can think of like, for instance, we're the one kind of there about contact form. We can see that in that case, visual view is just contact form across all the tabs, and the tab names obviously have the specific tab. Is there do you have one for the page title, or do you not have a column for that?
Well, it would follow the same pattern. It's just
Okay.
that they would be like the other way around.
Okay,
in the page title.
Okay. So yeah, I guess my specific recommendation would be to also include the secondary level of tabs, in addition to the primary one. So where we have, for instance, manage form display, let's say we could also have the fact that, you know, the first tab is default and the next tab might be teaser, you know, so again, providing that context for screen reader users and in the page title as well.
Yeah, that would be in the page title as well, because the page title for that specific page would be managed display teaser.
Right.
So it would be then in the page title as well.
Yeah, and yeah, I was thinking, yeah, like you've got there. So did you just add those there, Ralph? The
Laurie
I
edited.
just edited the H1.
Oh, that was Laurie. Sorry.
After
Okay, yeah.
the title section is like still with the original titles, right? So this
Okay.
it would be the H1 after furloughs, but you would have to reverse, like you would have
Yes.
to change the order of those two.
Would you also write the title as article manage display Drupal, or keep it front loaded? Because I'm still not a fan with the order of what's in the H1 with the article manage display. That's having in every line the same first one or two words identical and redundant across, for example, a content type is, I'm not sure. And one other detail, I wouldn't, for the edit tab, I would add something like settings or configuration or edit or something like that, that at the moment it's just article without any context, because you're able to do something there on that page.
Yeah, Thomas, do you want to come in?
Yeah, so listening to what Ralph's saying, I both agree and disagree, which is not very useful. But the issue that I'm seeing is when you're front loading the information, it gives you the context of where you are, and you're going largest to smallest, which also matches the path. However, looking specifically at line 38, for instance, where it says article, and we look at the title for article, article is all the information that you really have in the path. And the title expands upon that to tell you what you are doing at that location. So the title of the page is more than just article, it's telling you more. And then when you get over to the H1 after follow-ups, when Ralph pointed out that article was insufficient because article at that point is matching path, but its overly simplified form doesn't have the contextual information visible to a sighted user in the title. Taking those two concepts and trying to figure out how to do them consistently, because that's what I was trying to express earlier in title. It's an opinion that someone is expressing how to transform article as the path into the title to tell you what you're doing on the page, which is an expanded form of information. When we get to the H1, it's supposed to be for the non-sighted reads or for the users using the visually hidden H1, it gives different information for 38, and that follows the pattern for the exceptions for things like books in lines 22 and 23. I don't know if what the experience is like on the page when you're doing the visually hidden view of the H1. Does a user need to know article first because that's the context, or do they need to know RSS full content so that they don't have to listen to from a reader all of the information? Like I don't know, is there meaning to just say RSS, or is RSS meaningless without article managed display RSS? Like I understand wanting to move RSS to the left so it's the first thing mentioned, but does that have the consequence of, do we still need to have all of the information, or is there more information than we need? And how consistent do we need to be in doing this? Like, do we have to have the pattern operating the same in all non-exception instances? Or is this something where it's different for different things because we are manually making title different for different things because it isn't programmatic? The title is human intervention. And so does that mean when we look at the H1 after follow-ups, do we need to be responding to that human intervention of edit article content type rather than just saying article? Thank you.
She, in the chat, Emma has also put, is there an option to test with a user in context of completing a task using screen reader to navigate?
Yeah, Aaron, I just put that in because it can help when you,
Yeah.
as Thomas has just said, when it's a question of what is the, like, I personally don't have experience of using a screen reader to navigate, so I wouldn't feel qualified to say whether one approach would be better than another. So often it can help if you have got that evidence, but it can be quite hard to get as well. I know from our experience working in the university, so it's just an idea.
We could try to get that, because I think we have some contacts, and this is significant enough issue that it could, benefit. There would be enough value in that.
Yeah.
I think that would be useful, yeah.
I'm mindful that we're approaching the hour. I've tried to, because I think one of the things that, and I'm mindful of everything, all the feedback that people have given so far, but one of the things that I think would be useful out of this is for us to either, if we can, agree on some guiding principles or sort of, some sort of general rule of thumb, or what am I trying to say? Pattern. That's the word I was looking for. So I've drafted kind of two statements, and I'm putting them in the chat, and maybe actually I'll put them separately. And the first one is the visual H1 should be consistent across all primary and secondary tabs. And the second statement is the visually hidden H1, so for screen readers and others, and the page title should always, I missed a word, should always contain the information from the active and the active primary and secondary tab. I feel like from hearing everybody, that may be something we can all agree on. Does anybody have any objections to those statements? Or is everybody kind of broadly in favor? Because that might be something that we can at least help by using these to push the issue forward. And I see Ralph and Thomas are giving thumbs up to +1s to those. And Emma, and Laurie. Okay, that sounds like a consensus that we have there. And I wondering actually, I think that broadly aligns with, because I think the only difference from what we're seeing here is basically to also include the active, secondary tab, and also include, like you've done there, Ralph, with the article, say also edit. But again, I think we would want that to be consistent. Personally, I'd want that to be consistent with the tab name, because if you're a screen reader user and you come across the title and then you come across a tab with a different name that says active, that could be confusing, because you think, okay, if the title says this and I'm on an active tab that has, it's important that active tab then has potentially the same information in it. So it's easy for you to make that connection, like, okay, this is the active tab I'm on. So I think, it sounds like we've got some kind of consensus there.
Just one suggestion in addition, because I'm still not a fan of not front loading it like in what's currently in the H1, but as Emma suggested, would it be possible to test both variants, one front-loaded, one and basically in one word, keep title and H1 consistent from the order, and test it one time front-loaded and the other time the other way around with screen reader users, and then decide on their feedback which road to take.
Yeah, I think that's probably like A/B testing, or just giving one user the chance to test both and tell which one they would prefer.
Yeah, but because my suggestion in regards of the front loading was based on a study from Ginny Reddish, as well as from the Niels Norman group, where it's recommended to front load also how people read a report, and that was my reasoning based on. But well, if actual screen reader users of Drupal prefer the other way around, I'm also fine with it. But I would test it and keep it consistent, because at the moment in the state like it currently is, with title front loaded and H1 the other way around, I consider it confusing and inconsistent.
I'm leaning towards seconding that, because yeah, again, thinking about the consistency and providing a, what is the word I'm looking for? Like oh, that's so annoying. I cannot remember the word I was trying to use there. But yeah, providing that consistency between the title and the H1 and the tab, linking those together so that the user is really clear about where they are in the navigation of in the hierarchy. But yeah, it sounds like we've got some good steps there, and obviously we've only got a few minutes left. So are there any final comments at the moment?
I had a small one, but I see Ralph's hand still up.
Oops, no, sorry.
I'm still a little concerned about what I think of as the depth issue, but kind of doing it in reverse depth, going from right to left, in that it isn't always super clear to me when you look at the path itself and you go, there are some paths where it seems like it's going several levels deeper. And I just didn't see super consistency between the title and the path everywhere. And I don't know if that's part of this issue or not, or if we're really just looking at existing titles and we're cleaning up the H1s in regards to the existing titles, or if we're looking at titles as well and trying to say, how are we being consistent with titles?
So I think this issue specifically is just about how does the UI decide to render the page titles. So it's not even about changing the specific titles of pages per se. Like the change is happening in the title block, and it's that we decide that we are using different information from the system to generate the H1. And then the follow-up issue would be then to figure out what do we want to feed that algorithm.
Okay,
and
so
I
the
think
follow-up is about the title.
Yeah, the follow-up itself is about like what should this specific controller, this specific path feed to that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So basically, in this issue, the underlying infrastructure is built or reshaped, and the actual output is then decided on in follow-up issues.
Yes.
Okay.
Or like we will change it will be rendering basically what we have on the C column when we add the infrastructure in place. But then we can go like one section at a time to fix them and make them make sense. But it's good to take a look at it from, I guess, the broader perspective to make sure that we are making them consistent across the board.
Yeah.
This is self-interested at this point, but the other issue I wanted to talk about today was from last week, and it's the Drupalisms. When we talk about titles, so in the follow-up issue, will it potentially be important to understand what may or may not be a Drupalism when we're talking about what those final titles are that we want to feed to the H1? Is that something we should consider, or is that a follow-up where we want to go through and do a follow-up and fix everything and then maybe consider how the language may or may not be Drupal island specific?
I think we probably have several different kinds of follow-ups where we have ones where it's clearly just removing excessive information that is not needed in the title. And then we're probably going to have things that are about the Drupalisms. Like we have one of the issues about like the managed display and managed form display and all of that. And I don't know, like maybe there's a step that we do before so that we can make some incremental progress. But yeah, so maybe it is that idea of like follow up where we have several things happening, because it's much easier to make progress when you work on well-scoped issues.
And yeah, and it's also worth keeping in mind there are other things going on around the admin UI. Like there's the effort to kind of reorganize and reshape the structure as a whole. So there are other factors that will come into play. We are just past the hour, so I am keen to bring this to a close. It sounds like we've got some good. We've managed to get a couple of good sort of overall guiding principles here, and also one specific action that could be taken around doing some testing with screen reader users around front loading. And I'm assuming, Laurie, I know at Acquia they do have some user testing they're doing in this sort of area. Is that right? So maybe is that something that you're happy to take away and see if it could be done?
Yeah, I'm going to research in the next few weeks if it's something we could do.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I'll let you know if I need any help with that.
Okay, great. And yeah, obviously, I'm sure we could we can continue this discussion next week if people want to come back with I know, yeah, Thomas, you can talk about the Drupalisms and things, but I'll share those two things I'll put them in Slack so we've got them. And but yeah, thank you everybody for coming today. I think this was a good meeting, and we will be back next week, and I think Benji will be back as well. So great.
Thanks for hosting the meeting, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. And
Thanks,
everyone.
Aaron.
Aaron.
Thank
And
you.
have a nice weekend.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.